Welcome back to Coast to Coast. Sorry we took the week off. I was at my other job filming for some surf skim stuff, and yeah, I didn't have any internet. So turns out Mexico doesn't have good internet. Kind of feared that would be the case. Thankfully, Ed was cool about it. So again, sorry missing last week. But this week, we will be doing pretty much our favorite landing spots for 5 guys each. Not all first rounders, because I think that would be boring, and I'm sure there's been a good bit of coverage on that. So we're going to go with our 5 favorite kind of stops, or spots, I should say, where these guys went.
Some deeper cuts.
Sorry?
Some deep cuts.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it. I had to pull up one of them because I didn't know who he was. So Ed's got the deepest cut. But yeah, I think we got a bunch of good guys that haven't really been talked about too much. Well, some have, some haven't, but let's get started. Do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. I'll jump into the first one. This is one you and I had talked about a lot of best fits before the draft. And this is one that somehow I happened to just hit a bullseye for once instead of
Nostradamus?
wildly guessing and hoping for some people that end up on teams. And Darius Alexander ended up sticking with mine. So with the Giants, my personal team, he went there in the 3rd round, 65th overall. I was excited about this player coming in. I didn't expect him to fall this far. Obviously, there were talks about him being a late bloomer and being on the older side, because he's sitting at 25 right now. So I expected him to kind of fall into the 2nd round because initially he was kind of graded out as a late 1st round, 2nd round guy that was sliding, and got a little worried once the Giants made that trade up and got up into the 1st again. So they lost that 2nd round pick. So I was a little worried that it wasn't going to happen. And then somehow day 2 comes around and 3rd round pick, they still get him. Like I said, he's a late bloomer. Probably what caused his slide. The Giants have, arguably the best nose tackle in the league. Obviously, there's people that say things to the contrary, especially in the own division with Jalen Carter being there. But the Giants have Dexter Lawrence, so outside of him, there's really not a ton of depth. So I was really hoping that they'd add some depth to this line, especially on the interior, and they did with him. I mean, he's, like we talked about beforehand, he's an elite run defender, and he has the strength and size to hold up, as a 3-4 end for them, to complement him and be a good piece in Bowen's defense. He's got starting caliber potential. So I'm really excited about it. I think pairing him and Golston on either side of Lawrence is going to be fantastic, especially with the fact that they already had Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau coming into this. Then they walk away in the draft with Abdul Carter.
Yeah. Nuts.
They're just stacked, and I think he's in a position to just be able to not necessarily have to be depended on to be a top player on the defense, but I think he can produce with somebody like Dexter Lawrence getting double, even triple teamed at times in the middle, and then having those guys on the outside needing to be accounted for every single snap. So I think it's only going to amount to good things for him because he already had halfway decent pass rush skills to begin with. So he's obviously going to be a huge help on the run game, which the Giants were pretty awful at last year, even with the guys they brought in that were mainly run defense specialists, like bigger bodies. But he's one of those guys that's on the slender side. He's a little bit thinner as far as the D tackles go to play D end for this 3-4 front. I think it's going to be an amazing fit for him, for them. I think it'll be a good fit one way or another.
You hit the nail on the head. You already had one of the best front sevens in football, and in my opinion, at least one of the best front fours in football, because it's Brian Burns, Thibs, Dexter Lawrence is obviously at the top of the list, but then you add a guy like Abdul Carter. I mean, your NASCAR package could be ridiculous. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's fantastic to add someone like that can, I mean, who knows? Maybe he can spell Dexter Lawrence for a little bit too. Obviously, playing on the field helps with him a lot because I'll say it, Carter is one of the most dominant players in football, but Dexter Lawrence is also one of the most dominant players in football and has been for years. That's the difference, right? So, no, I'm not saying Jalen Carter next year is going to get bodied and kind of like beat up and whatnot. But yeah, last year was his breakout year, and people are going to start. Dexter Lawrence has already had those, and he had 17 sacks?
Yeah, I mean, he was leading the league until he got injured. So, I mean, he was up there. I think he was at like 9 when he got injured, and then
he was on pace for 17.
He was on pace. Yeah, he was on pace for double digits, and then he got injured, and that's when.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's still, even approaching double-digit sacks for a nose tackle is insane.
Unbelievable.
It's just ridiculous. Outside of somebody like Aaron Donald, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, not to undermine a 9-sack season from a nose tackle, because that's a 9-sack season. Not even playing the full season in its entirety is ridiculous.
Right. Because he's still all pro.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, he's exactly what you want as a nose tackle. He just mans it. But that's awesome to hear about Darius Alexander and kind of like what he's going to bring to y'all's team, because like you said, the run defense wasn't the best. I know there were some people injured and all that type of stuff, but I think Darius Alexander is going to bring that up at least a little bit. And then, I mean, shit, man, it's not going to be hard to be good on that defensive line.
And especially, and they've improved at just about every level on the defense too.
Yeah,
because it's like you add Abdul Carter, you add him, then in free agency they added Holland and Adebo. So it's like they've gotten better at every level outside of they didn't really add anything at linebacker, but like, did you really need to? Like, you don't really need to get flashy in a 3-4 defense if you've got 2 guys that are solid tacklers that can also cover the assignments that they have to. It's like you don't need these otherworldly Fred Warners on the field and stuff like that. I mean, you'd like to have those guys, but like with all the other strengths they have in the secondary now and across the line, it's like you don't necessarily need an all-star team at every level. I think they'll get by with having, not to say that, Bobby Okereke is obviously an above average linebacker, and McFadden is solid too, but like,
yeah.
They don't need all pro linebackers for them to be a top 5 defense.
Like, it's for whatever reason. I know there were reports on Okereke, however you pronounce it. Yeah. Forgive us. Yeah. I know there were reports earlier in the offseason that just not good. He wasn't this, he wasn't that.
Yeah, they were talking about them possibly moving on from him, but I think that was just a random rumor that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, so year 2.
Which is good.
It is difficult having a new defensive coordinator, and I know Bowen didn't necessarily have the same thing as the cover. I'm blanking on his name, but that Seattle cover 3 heavy. God, it's bad podcasting. Sorry, everybody. Give me a second. It's going to eat me up if I don't figure this out. Indy Colts.
McDonald's.
I'm sorry?
You're talking about McDonald's defensive coordinator in Seattle?
No. DC 2020. No. Gus Bradley. Yeah, that's my bad. I completely blanked on his name, but that defense, there's a reason why you'd need a Bobby Wagner or in that cover 3 Seattle Legion of Boom style defense. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So maybe the first year with Bowman took a minute. I don't know. Like you said, everything around them, the linebackers. This isn't a show about the people on the team. This is a show about the new guys.
Yeah.
So forgive me going down the rabbit hole, but I think having the new pieces there in front and behind him, plus will help the linebackers out. But yeah, Darius Alexander is a great fit for y'all because he is added to an already stacked defensive line. So speaking of the Seattle Seahawks, Mike McDaniel gets his Kyle Hamilton. I think Nick Emmanwori is going to be an incredible fit there. Just looking what he does well. It's hard. It's hard to say someone's going to come in there and be Kyle Hamilton, but he does kind of sort of look like him on tape. He covers a lot of ground. He's tall. He's rangy. He's going to. They have a good secondary, right? It's Reek Woolen. Who knows what kind of year he's going to have because it's been up and down. But you got your boy Julian Love, Kobe Bryant, Josh Jobe is solid, and then Witherspoon, obviously, they're all pro level guy, Pitbull. And I know he's actually not size-wise, but he's actually, like Kyle Hamilton, can play anywhere on the field, inside, outside. But I think Nicky Manwari is going to be just phenomenal there, and obviously low-hanging fruit. He could be the next Cam Chancellor. Nah, he's just a perfect fit, and he seems like a smart. He seems like a heady player, honestly. And I mean, he can match up like with tight ends. Obviously, there's some good tight ends in the NFC West. George Kittle just got broken off, right? 19 mil a year.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's a Mike McDonald guy too, because rarely does he miss a tackle. You know, he really just takes guys to the ground. And yeah, I mean, I love the fit because it's perfect, honestly. Because Mike Mack needs his, I don't want to say star position, but he needs one of those guys. And then obviously it's going to give some flexibility too with Witherspoon. So Witherspoon may not necessarily have to play that slot role, and you can, because that was what Mike McDonald, when he had that flexibility with Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey and all those guys, that's when they really got on. I mean, they were always the Bengal killers, but that's when they really, really got unlocked, is when you had a bunch of very versatile guys that were. So I think it's a great fit. I mean, obviously he can jump with the best of them. I think what was his?
Yeah, his combine was ridiculous.
I mean, a 4.38, a 43-inch vert, 11.6 broad, and then you have at 6'3", 220. So yeah, Kyle Hamilton didn't necessarily have the best combine, right? But I think Nicky Manwari is going to be. I think he's going to be in Seattle for a long time, honestly, and as long as he's good with the smarts and stuff, which it seems like he does, because there were times where he undercut routes. There were times it seems like he's just going to be a perfect fit, in my opinion, for that new age Legion of Boom kind of thing. So we'll see. Please, for everybody watching, give him a couple years. Give him 3-4 years. I understand that there's contract implications and stuff, but we cannot stress this enough. It's around draft time, so this PSA will stop. It is okay if it takes time for players to get good. It takes time.
Absolutely.
And considering that Mike McDonald was one of the best, whether he was coaching the linebackers in Baltimore, whether he was coaching the entire defense, he was one of the best. Shoot, why is the word escaping me? Not evaluators, help them progress. Why is the word escaping me?
Mentor? I don't know.
Not mentor, no. Help with their evolution, not that. Holy shit. I can't think of the word.
I get where you're going, though.
Yeah, essentially.
He's gonna get the most out of these players that are in front of him on the defensive side of the ball.
Developing. He's going to get.
Exactly. He is a developmental coach, absolutely.
Yes, he's one of the best developmental coaches. Forgive me for horrible podcasting, everybody. A little rusty after that week off, but yeah. Long story longer, Nicky Manwari, fantastic fit for the Seattle Seahawks.
I think steal in the second round.
Yeah, honestly, because he was a first-round guy, man. All the traits. He's 6'3", 220, running a 4.38. So normally that goes in the first. Thankfully for Seattle, it didn't, because that's also middle of the second. He could have gone a lot earlier, but I'm sure Seattle's thanking their lucky stars he didn't.
Yeah. Him falling there is fantastic.
Oh, it's great. I think it's going to be, Cam Chancellor 2.0, Kyle Hamilton 2.0, and I understand likening people to elite players is not fair to them, but I just see he's got a lot of potential, and I think he'll live up to it with a good developmental coach.
Touche. Yeah, and with my next player also coming out of the secondary, Trey Amos.
Okay.
From Ole Miss. He was another one of those guys that was discussed in first round conversations. It's a lot of depth at cornerback, so a lot of guys were kind of getting thrown around at the end of that first round, early second. He went a little later than expected, because he was 61st overall, so he was at the back end of the second round. But I think the Commanders adding him was a great fit for both sides, not only for him but for them too. I think a lot of teams, especially in the East right now, in the NFC East, obviously, I know a lot of places are saying that the divisions are stacked, but obviously that's you have the world champions in the division.
Yeah.
You have the other team that was in the NFC Championship as well, and Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
So, and the Cowboys always find a way to make it work. And like we had discussed when we were talking about Darius Alexander, that defense has the potential to be top 5. They've made a lot of additions on
Yeah.
offense too. So the
Well,
Giants, as much as they've had a bad record recently, I think they're going to be a competitive team. So it's going to be a stacked division.
and I mean, and to your point with the stacked division, look at the guys you have to play year in, year out. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, CeeDee Lamb.
Yep. Neighbors.
That exactly.
McLaurin, now Deebo Samuel.
That's very true. Yeah, McLaurin's going to be iron sharpen iron, and then you add him with Samerstill, and that'll be they.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at was like, a lot of these teams now, it's like you can't just have 2 solid corners anymore. You have to have a solid room. You need that you need 2 solid guys on the outside. You need a solid nickel, and I thought it was smart for them to do that. They've got, like you said, they've got Sanders still. They traded for Lattimore. Lattimore may not be there long term. Who knows? It might just be a short term thing, and it might be a situation where Amos just slides into the role. But right now, they've got all 3 of them, and I mean
Yep.
that is a huge. That's a huge thing to have depth wise. They just depth wise.
Yeah.
B also just it's hugely important right now. Like you said, we listed all those wide receivers that are just in division, not even talking about the actual conference itself. And around football, it just being a passing league.
Yeah.
But as far as the player goes, he's not the quickest athlete, but he's got good NFL size. Like he's above 6 feet, around 200 pounds. So I mean, he's got the build to hold up against some of these bigger wide receivers that are out there. Guys like AJ Brown, you mentioned.
Definitely.
So he's okay for press coverage and things like that. He's gonna fit well in the Quinn system because he needs those bigger, stronger guys. Obviously they had that issue with Forbes. They made a mistake keeping him around a little longer than he needed to.
Yeah, poor guy.
But like I said, teams are realizing that they really need at minimum those 3, just like CB2s at the very least, like 3
Yeah.
across the board. And granted, like the other 2 guys they already have are well above that right now from what they've shown.
Yeah.
Obviously, Lattimore has been very good for quite a few years, and Sanders still showed this year that he can do it, and we'll see if he can do it long term.
Yeah.
But as a whole, I think Amos is a he's a guy that he's got a lot of tape that shows that he can do it at a high level. He played at Ole Miss, so obviously coming from a conference that plays a lot of high end talent, a lot of the wide receivers coming into the league he's played against in big games. I think he puts the college tape is out there for what he can do, and I think putting him in a Dan Quinn defense with those other corners, and just in another defense that has like a ton of quality players at each level. Whether he comes in and immediately makes a difference or he slowly progresses, I think it's another situation where it's a best fit for him. He's not going in being expected on like a lower level team to be the CB1. Like right now he's CB3.
Yeah.
And I think the expectations are going to be much lower, but also at the end of the day, like he's going to be able to make an impact much sooner being in a much lower level situation. He could very well have an impact kind of like Cooper DeJean had coming in as a rookie, being a higher level corner who gets to just kind of slot into that third role and not have to come in right away and be that star player.
No, definitely. I mean, he doesn't have to Samerstill it last year, right? Come in and be CB1 off a rip.
Right.
But even then, you hit the nail on the head with Dan Quinn's defense. Samerstill didn't test crazy. Everyone thought he was a little slow. This is kind of like the defensive line thing. Oh, he's 6'3", 250. He's small. He's not running a 4.3 40. This guy's slow. So I think you hit the nail on the head on all of that. Dan Quinn's system's going to be very favorable for his style and kind of how he plays. And then you got guys, like you said, Worst case scenario, he's Marshawn Lattimore insurance. Best case scenario, he's playing on the field with Marshawn Lattimore, right? Because obviously Lattimore's had injury issues, and then hey, maybe you have Amos, and then you can slide Samerstill inside, and now you have a pretty solid, or maybe Amos can slide inside. I don't know what his capabilities are that way, because it seems like he was an outside corner at Ole Miss, but it's all about having the best guys on the field. And like you said, I mean, you guys might have the best division wide receiver wise in football, because I know I'm really high on Neighbors. I think he has potential to be a top 5 wide receiver if you give him a good. I mean, look what he did with garbage last year. You know, no offense to the quarterbacks that played for you guys last year, but they were awful. And then you have A.J. Brown, who's a top 10 at worst, you know, probably closer to top 5. Devonta Smith is also a top 15 wide receiver. He has to play against in practice, like you mentioned, Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. And then, yeah, it's a tough CeeDee Lamb. I watched Nate Wiggins have to go up against CeeDee Lamb as a rookie. He got a couple times. So I think Amos. I think you're right, though. I think just to say it again for the 5th time, I think it's a perfect spot for him, honestly. Speaking of Nate Wiggins and the Baltimore Ravens, you guys didn't think I couldn't keep a Raven off this. Or you guys thought I couldn't I was going to keep a Raven off this.
We each needed one homer pick.
Yeah, come on. Our last couple.
If I had one, you get one.
Full transparency.
Now it's your turn.
Full transparency. It just happened. It organically happened. But Mike Green to the Baltimore Ravens is selfishly probably one of my favorite picks in the NFL draft, because you got a guy with elite production. And it wasn't just elite production in the FCS. You know, Marshall doesn't have the best competition, strength of schedule, but let's toss on that Ohio State tape and tell me he's not an elite pass rusher. I mean, he's...
Yeah. Ask Josh Connerly.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. Ask Josh Connerly, which again, he was playing right tackle, probably never played right tackle before. Have to make that. He ended up where he needed to be, so he got drafted in the 1st. Connerly, all is forgiven. But yeah, ask Josh Connerly how that bull rush rep went. Mike Green, I mean, I am so excited to get him in with Chuck Smith. And then you got a guy like Kyle Van Noy that can take him under his wing. I know he had some character concerns coming out, but Baltimore is not drafting character concern guys, so it seems like whatever happened to get him out of, I think, Virginia, seems like that wasn't, I don't want to say that big of a deal, because allegations are always very serious, especially when they're of that nature. But Baltimore kind of cleared him, and 17 and a half sacks. We've finally got a guy with production. Ajabo didn't have production. Afeowe didn't have production until this past year.
Yeah, I was gonna say he started to.
Yeah, he's starting to turn on, but it took him a little while.
He's had his moments.
Yeah. As I had my PSA earlier, he's been a great run defender, though, so I can't really... As I had my PSA, he's taken a little bit longer than the flock would like for a late 1st-round pick to happen. I've been more patient, but everyone wants him to sent straight into the sun. So, yeah, it's just going to be... Honestly, it's just going to be awesome having a guy with that type of production, being able to learn from Kyle Van Noy and Chuck Smith, and I think he's going to be a perfect fit for the Ravens defense, because he is an all-around guy, right? He can play the run pretty well, and honestly, because that was something that when I was watching for our edge rankings, when I was watching him it was impressive how he handled Ohio State in the run game, you know, because I wanted to see what...
Agreed.
Right? And their defensive line wasn't awful, but they didn't have a bunch of 1st-round picks is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to be as kind
they didn't.
Possible.
And he's one of those guys that's always in the backfield. Like, he doesn't take plays off. He's always involved in the play, whether it's in the backfield or along the sidelines or up the field further. He's not one of those guys that he's hunting for the quarterback and that's the end of the play for him. He's not that guy. He's a well-rounded, like you said, he's a well-rounded player. He's going to jump in. He's going to set the edge when he needs to. He's not just going to pin his ears back and always be rushing the passer, but he's got all the tools to take advantage of the situations when he is rushing the passer. He's got that quick first step, and he's got all the other moves that he needs to have to then kind of expand from there when he does get to the NFL.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of your your Trey Amos thing, he doesn't have to be the guy. You got
Right.
You got KVN, you got Ojabo. He's got one of his last chances to kind of show that, and he has flashed. David Japo is. That's been a big point of contention for Ravens fans that they didn't draft George Pickens over David Jabo, but Pickens was never a Raven. They don't like headaches,
Thank
but
God.
yeah, thankfully. I know we've yapped about that a little bit, but he doesn't need to be. You got Tavius Robinson too. You have a solid room, and to be able to add a guy with 17 and a half sacks, it's insurance if Dafe Owe leaves next year. It's insurance if Ojabo leaves. It's insurance. It's a perfect fit. Now you got the pass rush master. You got his sensei coming in with Chuck Smith, best pass rush coach in the NFL. Yeah, I'm a little biased, obviously, with that, but I think a lot of guys in the NFL would say that. It's unfortunate he doesn't personally train guys anymore, but hey, I like to have him in Baltimore. So
Yeah, there you go.
long story longer, Mike Green, probably my favorite pick of the NFL draft outside of Malachi Starks. But that was low hanging fruit. We all knew we would have liked that one. But yeah, Mike Green, getting him in the second too. That's pretty much all I got. We were talking about him being a first round pick, top 15.
Yeah, I think everybody was too. I think that was a consensus. So just the sheer fact that he did fall was one of those things that just I think it caught everybody off guard. I don't think anybody really expected that to happen. I mean, it makes sense to a certain extent because he was, like you said, somebody from Marshall. Guys from Marshall just don't go in the first round, especially not edge rushers. There's no history of that.
Yeah.
So after the fact, yeah, it makes sense. But on paper, it's mind blowing that even a guy from Marshall with those stats can fall where he fell. And DaCosta stuck to his board. He drafted the best player available, and now, like you said, they've got a guy that could very well be a first round talent, and we'll see if that translates to the NFL. And I think it will. I haven't seen anything that said otherwise.
Couldn't have
So
happened to
I
a
think
program.
yeah, and more power to him. Going from there, I'm gonna shift back to the offensive side of the ball, and I'm gonna go to the NFC North with our boy Dan Campbell in Detroit with Tate Ratledge. And we talked
Okay.
about this one a little bit. It's not the
Dog.
sexiest pick. It's not the sexiest pick, uh, but this is a Detroit Lions pick to a T. This is Dan Campbell. Ratledge, he's not the most dynamic player. He's not, like I said, he's not a sexy player. Offensive linemen rarely are.
He's sexy to Dan Campbell.
But yeah, he's tough. He's gritty. I know that word gets abused with Detroit, but he's solid at pass blocking, and he's one of those downhill run blocking guys that's just he's gonna do everything they need him to do. He's gonna be on the inside. They lost Zeitler, who is at this point still an above average guard in the league,
Yeah.
but he's on the older side, so obviously they didn't want to invest a ton of money in that position. They've got one of the best lines in the league. And it somehow got even better by adding Ratledge in the second round. He's
Yeah.
going to slide into that spot that Zeitler left at right guard. Still probably going to be at the worst above average because obviously he's a guard out of Georgia. Very very good, very very high likelihood that they have those guys translate. They do quite often, especially in this draft. There were a lot of them on the inside. I think both of the guards and the centers all got drafted pretty high. And I think he's going to be a starter right away. There's not a ton to say. It's not one of those things where I can talk at great length because I think this is one of those ones that's really straightforward. And I know it doesn't sound like I'm very excited about this, but it's one of those things where like the rich get richer. They sat there, they got a player that worked for them. They stuck to their board. He was the best player available. It just happened to be a guard. Like I said, it's not a sexy pick, but they already have one of the best offensive lines in the league. It only got better. It's only going to be, better for that offense. They lost Ben Johnson, so who knows what kind of transition they're going to have. So keeping that offensive line tough and sturdy for that run game and for Goff to maintain what he's been doing.
Yeah.
maintaining that as a strength, I think is the smartest thing they could do
Yeah.
for that offense to continue to succeed with Johnson gone and in Chicago.
I think Gibbs and Montgomery are going to be running behind Ratledge for, well, maybe not Montgomery, but I think Gibbs is going to be running behind Ratledge for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I would not doubt that.
Because it's
sticking to him like a magnet into the second level.
Well, and like you said, with their line too, it's you get to play next to Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. Two of the better tackles in the league, so that helps a lot. I know Ronnie Stanley and then their center's good too, right? I think you hit the nail on the head there. Ratledge is gonna pop right in, be a day one starter, and maybe there'll be some growing pains, like with, not to bring up another Raven, but their Rosengarten last year, right? Had some growing pains, but towards the end of the season, I think he was one of the better right tackles in football. So I think that's going to be a perfect. Yeah, it's not a sexy pick unless you're Dan Campbell, but it's a pick that's going to be. It's just going to dictate the rest of this window that they have, So I completely agree. I think he's a Detroit Lion. He's going to be biting kneecaps, and Gibbs and Monty are going to be pretty stoked. And then obviously Goff, too. He doesn't like to be hit. Not that quarterbacks like to be hit.
Nobody likes to be hit.
Yeah, no one likes to be hit except for Joe Burrow. Fucking guy. But I guess I'll stick on, with my next guy, the offensive side of the ball as well. And back to the Seattle Seahawks, to the NFC West. Jalen Milroe.
Okay.
I think Mike McDonald saw what Baltimore did with Lamar Jackson. Now, caveat, Milroe wasn't a Heisman Trophy winner. Jalen Milroe is a lot less developed than Lamar Jackson was coming out of college. But having a great developmental coach, yes, on the defensive side, I'm certain he has his offensive side of the ball kind of rolling with that. I mean, I think Dan Orlovsky said it. Who's has the highest upside out of any quarterback in this draft class? And it's Jalen Milroe. Because when you watch him play football, yes, obviously he gets a little skittish in the pocket. Yes, sometimes he Brett Favre's his receivers and rifles a short pass over the middle and it bounces off for an interception. But if you can potentially get him that Josh Allen type growth, easily, I mean, he has more upside than half the guys in the past class too. Granted, it's hard to say that because Daniels is a dog, May is a dog, Caleb Williams is a dog, but if you can get his accuracy a little bit under check, which it worked with Josh Allen, if you can get all that type of stuff, and then honestly, I mean, what did they picked him in the fourth round, right? I think.
Yeah.
So
because he went a
third round
before.
Yeah. He went the 28th pick in the third round. I mean, taking a flyer on a third-round quarterback. And, hey, he's not going to be Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson was a third-round quarterback too.
Yeah, but I also, with your point with, the upside too, look at how people were reacting to, Joe Milton.
Yep, absolutely.
This is the same kind of flyer.
Yeah.
This is the same kind of player. Obviously, Milton, it was a little bit more people were saying it was, scheme dependent a lot coming out of college with him, but he's shown in the NFL and in the 1 year that he had the opportunity that it may be that may have been lumped on him a little bit more than it should have been.
Yeah.
But when you have an exciting player like that has such high upside and that has all the tools, has the big arm, can run, can do it all.
Yeah.
If he can continue to do that at the next level and improve the accuracy and improve, which Milroe too, he did improve his accuracy each year. So, I mean, that's already on its way up to begin with. And that wasn't one of those things where they managed it in any way.
No.
He was already working on it because he saw it as a shortcoming for him.
Yep.
So, I mean, if he continues to work on that, and then, like you said, is he Lamar Jackson? No, but if there was going to be somebody that was going to be Lamar Jackson, he's probably the closest person to be able to do that because he's that quality, he's that level athlete. He can run as fast as him.
Running wise,
he's right there with him. There's nobody that could get closer to Lamar than him. Running wise, he is elite. And that's something you can lean on like they did with Lamar.
They didn't necessarily need to, in my opinion, and Greg Roman kind of stunted his growth for a long time. But thankfully, Greg Roman won't be in Seattle for Jalen Milroe. He's tormenting Justin Herbert right now in LA, but that's something you can lean on too. So, and Darnold seemed to do well helping JJ McCarthy through his rookie year too. Maybe Darnold becomes one of this hired gun kind of guy that he gives you above average quarterback play, but also, I don't want to say above average because he was in the MVP race for a while until he started seeing ghosts again. No, I completely agree, man. It's why not take a flyer in the third round? Because if you hit, I mean, he's going to be an incredible quarterback. He has a cannon for an arm. He can run like Lamar Jackson. If he can, and then to your point, he was getting better every year with all this stuff that he needed to. And yeah, last year he wasn't as good as you'd like, and he made some mistakes, but he also made insane plays. I don't remember if it was this year or last year, but it was fourth and 15, and he throws that touchdown to beat, I forget the team it was, and it's also too having a new offensive coordinator. So everyone wants to dump on 2024 season, having a new offensive coordinator, losing Nick Saban, arguably the greatest.
Having an entirely new coach, not only just offensive coordinator, but a new coach as well.
Yeah, and it's no slight to DeBoer because it seems like he's got the ship running pretty well.
Yeah, he did. He transitioned that really well.
But at the end of the day, he's not Nick Saban, and you're going to lose coaches, right? You're going to maybe lose a QB coach, maybe. So I don't know. I just love taking a flyer on a quarterback like this in the third round because it's why the fuck not, man. Worst case scenario,
it's an ideal situation for both sides.
Yeah,
it's an ideal situation for Seattle because, like you said, they just signed Sam Darnold, and he's a guy that A, he's still young. B, he's produced after. I think he's shown flashes in other situations, and then last year he proved that like he can legitimately do it. That wasn't a flash in the pan last year. So they've got him. At the worst, they've got a above average quarterback to lead them.
Yep.
And then they got Milroe. They didn't have to give up a high amount of draft capital to do it. They used, what'd you say, it was a mid third round pick.
Yeah.
So, which is probably what they got. It was probably one of the ones they got from either the DK draft or the DK trade or the Geno Smith trade, I would assume. So, right there, it's like you immediately go and you're using that capital to get a guy that could very well be a game changer at quarterback.
Yeah.
So it's like you let him, like you said, you let him learn behind Darnold, and eventually he could replace Darnold. If they feel that he's got a higher ceiling, a legitimate higher ceiling in the actual league, not because obviously on paper his ceiling is much higher than Darnold.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's like we don't know that yet, but he could very well end up being that player. So if they, get to a point where they see that on the field, you can easily slide him in and go from there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Darnold's contract is pretty much a 1-year deal. Like, I think the only guaranteed money's on this year, and I think after this season, I forgot where I heard that. Let me double check. But I'm pretty sure they have a pretty easy.
Oh, that's good.
So it's pretty much a 1-year. So yeah, it's a 1-year. It's a 1-year. So 2025 cap hit is 13. The 2025 cash is 32 million. Incentives, workout, base. Okay, so they'd have. It's not awful. The potential out. So they have an option. They have an option after the second year, but even then they could. I mean, you probably wouldn't want Milroe starting. Like, give him a couple years, right, and then let him kind of get into it. But yeah, I don't know. Long story longer, Jalen Milroe, I think I agree. I think he got in the perfect spot, and I think Mike McDonald might have his Lamar Jackson. He's got his Kyle Hamilton, now he's got his Lamar Jackson. So up next for you, who we got?
So speaking of Lamar Jackson and running backs, I got
Hey now, easy. Top three quarterback QBRs all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not bad for
And yeah, not bad for a running back. So I went here staying on the offensive side. I went with Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. He was a guy I liked coming into this year. He obviously didn't have, you know, a repeat year, that stellar year from 2023.
yeah,
But I think he's got the makeup, he's got the tools to be a productive NFL player. Like we talked about before the pod, he's a Doak Walker, award winner from 2023, and that's almost, like 90% of the time that translates to somebody being productive in the NFL. Like I said, it's like Bryce Love, I think, is the only guy in the last 10 years that hasn't ended up being a productive running back in some way, shape, or form.
yep,
But as far as the fit with Miami, he was a sixth round pick. I know most people, it's like these guys have no guarantees. He may very well not even make the roster. I know that's the case with most guys going in the sixth round. But in this running back room, even though it is a crowded room right now, I think this is one of those rooms, much like San Francisco. Not only is the offense built the same way,
yep,
but the likelihood of depleting that room are also very consistent.
yeah,
You've got Achane, you've got Jalen Wright, and you've got Alexander Madison. None of those guys can stay on the field. When Achane has been on the field, he's been ridiculous.
yeah,
The proof is in the pudding. He's involved in the passing game. He's getting the rock every game for about 20 times a game in the run game, and then a ridiculous amount of receptions in the passing game. He's completely involved.
yep,
But once again, he can't stay on the field. It's
yeah,
been the same game multiple years. Jalen Wright just played this past year. He's another one. He's a smaller size guy. Like you said, I think you said that it's more of like a scat pack.
yep,
And then Alexander Madison's just one of those guys that, like, he's more depth than anything. So, like, I don't think if it gets down to the point where he's the thing in the way, it's a guarantee that Gordon's going to take it over. But
completely agree.
Miami leans on the running back, and they're gonna lead with the running game first. Even though this is a passing league, they've got Tua, they've got Tyreek Hill, they've got Jalen Waddle,
Yeah,
and I know they've added some other guys that I'm forgetting too in Miami in that third wide receiver spot. But just because Gordon had a down year in 2024, I don't think that means he's not a quality, prospect, and that he's not going to be a good NFL player. I think he was going to be a good NFL player no matter where he went. But the fact that he's going to Miami as a sixth round pick, I think this is an easier path for him to getting a starring role because of what I said. I don't think any of those guys can be expected to be a guarantee to be finishing this year as the starting running back. And I think
well,
he could easily take over and be that guy
yeah,
because he's got the strength, he's got the balance, he's got the agility to do it all. And I think that he's one of my favorites to end up being like a big time steal.
well, and maybe at the end of the day too, he can help take that lighten the load off Achan. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
right.
if he's struggling to stay healthy, let Ollie Gordon's been the bell cow for years, right?
Yeah.
And one of his years was incredible. I mean, like you said, you don't just the Doak Walker Award isn't just handed to people. You don't just get that because people like you and oh, you're doing great. It's not an attaboy. It actually means something in college football. So yeah, I think it's perfect, right? And he's going to be good in their scheme at the end of the day too. And he's not Christian McCaffrey catching the ball out of the backfield, but he's not
No.
inept at it. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think he's just going to be a perfect complement to all the scat backs they have in Alexander Madison, or he might even take Madison's lunch money and he gets jettisoned because I don't know, man. Watching the kid play, I don't see it not translating. You know, it's just one of those things where and like you said, Miami is not a bad spot because
No,
at the
it's
end of
not.
the day, I mean, they do need to figure out their offensive line. That's slightly terrifying, but it's not like he had an elite offensive line at Oklahoma State. I get it; it's a higher level competition, but I think Ollie Gordon's going to be just fine in Miami, and who knows? Maybe he becomes the bell cow, and that'd be a pretty solid 1-2 punch with Achan. honestly.
if he can stay healthy and they've got the two of them, I think even at its worst, I think Gordon being a rotational guy in that offense will still be a fantastic fit for him.
Well, and him getting drafted in the 6th in this draft class isn't necessarily an indictment on him. Because it's, I mean, you have Travion Henderson, you have Omarion Hampton, you have Ashton Genty, the blue chip. You have Quinshawn Judkins, you have Buddy
Scatterboo went in the 5th.
Scatterboo, my dog. Scatterboo in the 5th. Then you have Tyler Johnson from Iowa. You have, I mean, this draft class was nuts for running backs. So I think it's more an indictment on the class than necessarily the guys, because all those guys are going to, I mean, Scatterboo's going to be he's a great pickup for you guys, him and Tyrone Tracy. It's going to be an awesome 1-2 punch. And so long story short, I completely agree. I think Ollie Gordon going to Miami is going to be great, because he's easier path to the field than, I mean, if he came to like Baltimore or like there's other places where it's kind of tough sledding, or even like the Eagles or it'd be tough.
As a whole, I liked a lot of, to be honest, like across the board, I liked a lot of the running back fits this year.
Yeah.
I feel like because like a lot of years there's those random landing spots where like these guys land places that it's just like shit. Like this guy was this guy had the capacity to be a bell cow back, or this guy should have been in a better situation where they could like take the rock and like take over, and he ended up in this spot. Like this, like now he's just a depth piece. Like for example, like when Charbonnet went to Seattle behind, Kenneth Walker, it was like, oh, like we had that, there weren't a lot of running backs, and they all ended up in like weird spots that didn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I feel like this year it was like all of the guys that landed places, they were all good landing spots this year, which was really cool. With the exception of maybe Cleveland had, Judkins and Dylan Sampson ended up in the same backfield. So it's one of those things where it's like, is Judkins just ending up in the same situation like he was in Ohio State, where it's like now he's going to share the backfield? But
I kind of like that pairing, honestly.
Yeah, it's a great pairing. I'm just saying, like, as far as like them being like the guys on the teams they're landing on, it's one of those things where it's like that's the only one that like I'm scratching my head where it's like
I get it.
But I like like you said, long story longer. I really like where all these guys have landed this year as far as the running backs go. Actually, offensively, I think as a whole, I think a lot of the landing spots for all the skill position guys were really good, from running back to wide receiver to tight end. I think all the guys, which is exciting from a fan standpoint, because I think it's only going to make the game better as a whole from the offensive perspectives.
Yeah, I hate that I have to hate Tyler Johnson now. It's a bummer. I liked him at Iowa, and now...
Oh, Caleb Johnson.
Why do I keep
Caleb Johnson, yes.
Caleb.
Yeah, that's another one. I consider
that's a great fit.
One of my great fits. That is a great fit with him with the Steelers.
It's a great fit, unfortunately, for Baltimore. But in the AFC North, it's perfect. He's a Steeler. Yeah. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's a perfect landing spot for Ollie Gordon, and I think Mike McDaniel's going to cook. Because if he can do what he did in San Francisco with people that are far less talented, then I don't want to say far less talented. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I get Ollie Gordon's a 6th-round pick, but if this was last year, he would have been a 3rd, 4th-round pick. It's just tough when you have...
I mean, look what he did 2 years ago with Jeff Wilson. I mean, it's like...
Exactly. Who's Jeff Wilson? He's not... He never won the Doak Walker.
Right.
Yeah. Should I go defense or offense for my next guy? I think I'm going to go...
Go defense. We haven't talked defense in a while.
That's fair. It's been a couple picks. I'll save my last offensive guy for last. My next person is my dog from Indiana, CJ West. If you guys didn't know, I am a Curt Cignetti super fan. I'm just kidding. The best coach in college football, bro. No, I just fuck with Curt Cignetti. I think he's an amazing coach, and I think what he did this past year with Indiana was noteworthy, because
They won the championship.
Yeah, I mean they get the fuck out of here. They, I mean he was playing with a bunch of JMU guys. Get out of here. Not everyone can pay $40 million to Jeremiah Smith and have fucking stealing players left and right. Kurt Signetti had to do it the old-fashioned way by developing players, not just stealing them from other like Ryan Day. I'm actually not. I don't really. I'd like Indiana. I like Kurt Signetti, but yeah, that's going to be a bit moving forward. CJ West, though, I really, really, really like the way he plays, and I really, really, really like the fact that he's going to go to San Francisco. I think he could, I don't want to say replace Javon Hargrave, because Javon Hargrave is one of the better interior defensive linemen in the NFL, and I think that would be unfair to CJ West because he's a fourth-round pick. But I really do like what he can do with his hands. He's violent. He's really hard to move for only being 316 pounds. Again, only. But I just think he's going to be a perfect fit for 49ers defense, especially now that Salah's back. I think Salah's going to love the guy. I think he's going to be
a wrecking ball.
Yeah, and he's got some good pass rush. It's not amazing, right? But he's got some pass rush chops. And he's just going to fit really well in San Francisco because they desperately need defensive line. So it's a good fit for him because he's like it's wide open. He could start day one. Well, so he works into gaps with on stretch plays and stuff like that, and helps disrupt the design. I mean, McVay, like kind of what they want to do with Kyron Williams, and then I don't think Seattle necessarily does, but I just feel like he's going to be perfect. He's just going to be a perfect fit for them, and I don't know. He's a good player, and I think he's also a like we were just talking about with Ollie Gordon. He's a victim of the class, right? I mean, there were legit 16 deep in D tackle, just like there was 16 deep in run. I think these might be the two most deep positions in the entire draft.
Yeah, agreed.
Outside of maybe edge, I just think
edge is always that way, right? Like every year we see that. It's just like there's these guys that don't have to flash an awful lot to be considered, a quality edge prospect. With these players this year, it's like the D tackles, like there were a lot of quality D tackles that went deep into the draft, and the same with the running backs. But yeah, I think with West specifically, I mean, like you said, he showed a lot on tape. He's playing for an Indiana team that Sig turned around that program, but I mean they've still been playing high-end competition to begin with. I mean, it's Indiana. This isn't some FBS school that he's playing at. And then, I mean, going to San Francisco in itself is a badge of honor because, I mean, Lynch does a very good job of identifying defensive line prospects.
Yep.
And then the fact that now Salah's there too, the combination of Lynch and then Salah obviously signing off on this player too.
Yeah.
He's going to be a capable starter for that line immediately.
Yeah.
And they're going to Salah specifically is going to know how to correctly manipulate that line and utilize him in the way that they want to, so they can get the most out of him. And they've already got quality players on that line, so sliding him in there and getting the most out of him is going to be really easy for Salah, and they're going to get that impact right.
Well, and another thing too that he played at Kent State, right? He was a 3-year starter at Kent State, and he went up a level of competition, and he made fucking plays against Ohio State. I remember watching the Ohio State game and I understand that if a couple things didn't happen, it would have been a much closer game. But at the end of the day, they got dog walked, like Caleb Downs returning a punt, all that type of stuff. There's a couple things where their depth you saw. But I mean, CJ West was strong at the point of attack in that game. And I think that's, to your point, I think it's cool that he went from Kent State, FCS, right?
FCS, yeah.
to now FBS at Indiana, and it's not FBS in the Big 12 or the not Pac-10, or the Pac whatever, or like Boise, the Mountain West, or any of these. Not that they're FCS, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's not. They're not. He had legit competition because they had to play. They had to play some. I mean, they played Nebraska. You know, they played a bunch of very good teams. So I think the fact that he went from Kent State and then got better at Indiana, to your point, with being Sala, with being in, they're a developmental team as well. I think he's going to be a great player. His floor is a good starter, and I think he could be above average to great. Great's a bit. I think he could be an above average starter, if that makes sense. So
starter caliber.
Yeah, I think he's going to, like you said,
one way or another.
And then I think he might develop into something a little better because he's done it. It's hard. I mean, look what Verse did from Albany to Florida State. Verse balled out.
Yeah.
So, and then again, we're not talking about the Big 12. We're not talking about some of these conferences that are a little weak. I mean, you could even throw the ACC in there this past year. All Coast Conference was pretty bad. But, yeah, CJ West.
I like it.
San Francisco 49ers. Love the fit. Who you got? Who you got next?
Who I got? My last one, staying out west.
The deep cut.
San Jose State, as Jeremy said, he had to look this one up.
Yep.
This is a little too deep of a cut. Jeremy knows I like to do this though with my wide receivers. I got Nick Nash from San Jose State.
Yep.
He's an undrafted free agent, so this isn't a draft pick necessarily, best fit. It's an undrafted free agent, ended up in Atlanta, which I think is the best fit for him and a great fit for them. I mean, it's obviously there's they're not gambling in any way, shape, or form with an undrafted free agent, but they're taking advantage of the fact that this guy fell as far as he did. He ended up being an undrafted, so they're going to take advantage of it. He's a big wide receiver, 6'2", 203 pounds at the combine.
Damn.
He's a former quarterback turned wide receiver. He was only a wide receiver for 2 full years.
Okay.
But he led the country in receptions, yards, and touchdowns on the year. Now, granted, I know it's Mountain. You know, he did play at San Jose State, but still, it's a legit college program now.
Yeah.
It's not some garbage town. But
was.
From the tape that I watched with him, I ended up loving the guy. This was one of those guys that was on my list pre-draft. He had great footwork. Route running was amazing. His releases are amazing. Had 30% of his stats in the slot this past year, so the flexibility is there for an X guy because he's on the bigger side. Like I said, he's 203. He gets passed off as that like high volume receiver because of the targets that he got. He got like 170 some odd targets last year.
That's nuts.
But the tape shows otherwise. I saw a lot more than just a high volume guy. I mean, the production was there. Atlanta has a crowded wide receiver room, but I mean, outside of London, I don't see anybody on that team that he couldn't beat out. Because I mean, Mooney, McLeod, those kind of guys. There's a clear path to volume for him and a legitimate target share, especially with the fact that they don't have Arthur Smith there anymore, and it is more of a passing centric offense. This will be the first year with Penix as like the true starter from day one. So I think Nick Nash being there as like a jumbo slot, I think would be, just amazing for Penix to have, number one, for a young quarterback. And number two, I just think him as the wide receiver prospect that I liked, having him opposite London, who's, become a legitimate, wide receiver one for that team.
I know.
Contrary to what I wanted.
What we wanted. We were praying for London's downfall.
But I think pairing him with London and even Mooney, because I think Mooney's not an X wide receiver. I think he's more of like a field stretcher in like a more of a gadget sense. But I think Nash should be is going to be a perfect fit there. I was really excited when I saw this as his landing spot. I was
Yeah.
really hoping that he got drafted because I liked him a lot. I wanted that like clearer path and easier way for him to stick to a roster. But I think once he gets in that building and he starts working with the coaches and specifically Penix, he's going to end up being a um, big time playmaker. And I know Jeremy knows that I just love my sleeper wide receiver. I cling on to these guys, I'm a ride or die with my wide receiver.
Well, a benefit too of him going to Atlanta is that's the McVay tree. So Zach Robinson, he could end up anywhere. So, hey Zach, yeah, he didn't work out, but how's this kid? We just didn't have some room for him. One of those situations, and it's maybe McVay takes a flyer because they could use another wide receiver or anyone else from that tree because there's a lot of them, right? Isn't Liam Cohen also from the McVay tree? And
Yeah,
there's a lot of people
yeah,
around the NFL. I think he does have a spot there because, like you said, no one. I mean, Mooney's good. McLeod did well in those, but I mean, a big slot's definitely intriguing, right? And you just have Pitts, him, and London on a wide receiver set would be kind of nuts, honestly. Yeah, I think you're right though. I think it's a great spot for him because Robinson, no more Arthur Smith, obviously. Robinson, Penix is now full-time starter, and you still got Kirk there to be a great backup because Kirk isn't one of those guys that'll Brett Favre it and say, "I'm not giving you any game, Aaron Rodgers, because you're going to take my job." You know? Yeah, that's funny though. The deep cut, the deep cut.
deep cuts.
I think. Yeah, I think he's gonna. What is it? Yeah, 4.57. That's a little slow, but I mean, a 10.3 broad is pretty nuts for someone who's 6'2", 203 pounds. And he's from Irvine, California. That's not far from where I live. It's right down the road. He's the hometown hero of Irvine, California. So I'm gonna go with my last guy. It is not as deep of a cut as Ed's, but Jalen Royals. It really pains me. Yeah, it bums me out because he's on the Chiefs, and I think it's a perfect spot, man. Because you got Xavier Worthy, the field stretcher gadget. He's not just a gadget guy, but that's kind of how Reed used him. Then you got Rashee Rice coming back from his injury. I mean, shit, he could almost be Rashee Rice, not insurance, but I feel like their games are very. I don't want to say similar because that's not. He's a great route runner. He was. He's not a burner. He ran a 4.42, but he the way he created separation, and I understand that a lot of the time it wasn't against the best competition. But when you did watch the best competition, he had a great game against Oregon, and that's all filled with NFL DBs and NFL talent and all that type of stuff. And yeah, with his ability to kind of know where the defender, like he's going to get under Travis Kelce's wing and learn the dark magic of Travis. I just think that's going to help him out a lot. And then, because, I mean, when you looked at it before Rashee Rice went down last year, they were kind of force feeding him. So to a couple of our perfect fits, they do need another wide receiver, right? To help alleviate, because Rice had a pretty bad knee injury, help alleviate him coming back so he doesn't have to rush back. But also, even when Rice comes back, they still need some guys. You know, I think they still have Watson, who's solid, but I don't know.
I think they re-signed Hollywood Brown, but I mean, who knows?
Yeah, and also
he couldn't stay on the field either, so.
That was an issue with him, unfortunately. And at the end of the day, too, I don't think they re-signed him for anything too crazy guaranteed. So they might, if Jalen Royal shows, I don't think they're too tied to him.
Yeah, because I think it was just a 1-year deal again.
Yeah, and I don't even know how much. Again. I don't even know how much was guaranteed either.
Yeah, I doubt it was much after the way last year went.
Yeah. So, and like we always say, let's see. Yeah, it's 2025 cap hit, 6.7. 2025 cash. So it'd be a $6 million there. So he's on the roster for sure. But even then, like we always say, if he gets bumped down a peg, who cares, right? If
Yeah,
Hollywood
right.
Brown is your wide receiver 4 and Justin Watson's your wide receiver 5, and you have Rasheed Rice, Xavier Worthy, and Jalen Royals, it's kind of like what we always say. It's not an issue to create that kind of depth. Because again, if Hollywood Brown is your wide receiver 4, he's going up against your 4th best option at coverage if you're playing man, right? So there's nothing wrong with that, and yeah, I love the fit, but I also hate it so much.
Yeah, it's hard not to. It's another one of those, like, I know this gets abused a lot, but it's just like the rich get richer. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
They had Simmons fall to them in the first,
Yep.
who's arguably the best tackle in the draft,
Yep.
which was obviously a weakness for them. And then they get somebody like Royals that drops to them. That's a
4th.
high upside, high ceiling wide
Yep.
receiver. That, yeah, like you said, doesn't have to necessarily be the one coming in, because Rice and Worthy have both showed that they could both potentially
Yeah.
be a number one guy.
Yep.
So Royals, at the very least, has to be a number 2, number 3 guy. But he's also got the same upside both of them had coming in too, where it was like
100%.
neither of them had. I mean, yeah, maybe Worthy had more expectations because he was a first round pick, but prospect wise, he wasn't a guy that anybody thought would be a number 1 right off the bat.
If
He
he didn't,
didn't have that.
yeah,
He didn't have that. He didn't have that smoke, if you will, coming out that he was going to be a number 1 guy. Because I mean, he wasn't even the number 1 guy on his own team.
Mm-mm.
Coming out of the draft, or going into the draft, I should say.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's another one of those things where they're getting one of these high upside guys later in the draft, because they don't draft guys. Obviously, Worthy was the exception, but they typically do this with their wide receiver room. They take those late round stabs with high upside guys from, you know, quote unquote lesser schools. Rasheed Rice was what, SMU. Jalen Royals is Utah State.
Yep.
So it's like these aren't guys coming from those like SEC powerhouses.
Yeah.
Where you're taking a guy from LSU or Georgia or the like. You're getting these guys that are higher upside guys that are going to lesser programs, but are still high quality prospects that are going to a situation where like Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes can make it work. They're going to make it work one way or another.
Yeah.
Because Veach has, they've built their scouting program to figure that out.
Absolutely. And honestly, he's also pretty tough to bring down as
Royals
well.
is, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. They did it like you said. You brought up Rice, and I mean Travis Kelce too, Cincinnati. Like some of these guys aren't, but when you have the best, arguably the greatest offensive mind of all time, because an Andy Reid, and then you have Pat Mahomes, you have guys like Travis Kelce, you have guys. Well, I guess Thuney's not there anymore, but you know what I mean. Their whole team, and they don't have to be the guy, right? It's not like you guys last year where it's. Not that Malik Neighbors wasn't cut from the cloth to be the guy, but doesn't have to be the number 1 guy. It doesn't have to be. So no, I completely agree. The rich do get richer, honestly, and it bums me out because I wouldn't have minded him in the 4th round. Truth be told, because I think he makes any team better, and the fact that
absolutely, yeah,
and the fact that he went to Kansas City in the 4th, pick 31, is kind of a bummer. And yeah, just a great pick from a great organization, arguably the best GM in football, arguably the best coach in football, arguably the best quarterback in football, tight end.
Clean sweep.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. So yes, as sad as I sound and as bummed as I am that Jalen Royals is a Kansas City Chief, it's a fucking phenomenal fit, because at the end of the day, as Ed said, the rich get richer. But that pretty much wraps up my 5 guys, Ed's 5 guys, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed.
I'm hungry.
I hope you're hungry. You're gonna go grab some food.
Need some 5 guys.
Oh hell yeah! That's solid post pod meetup.
Solid plug.
Yeah. Hashtag Five Guys. Hey, who knows? Maybe in
Sponsor us, Five Guys.
Yeah, anytime now, Five Guys. We can. We have 9 subs. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Put the fries in the bag.
And our shorts have been averaging about 1,000 views per. So Five Guys, get on it. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. It's the doldrums of summer, so we're gonna get more into scouting, and we're gonna look at the 2026 draft class here. Might do a couple things here or there, but stay tuned on the next episode. We'll definitely let you know on kind of what we're thinking. And thanks always for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever everyone else is saying. And yeah, I appreciate you guys hearing us yap. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.